let's welcome in the AD of Nebraska, Troy Dannen, to HuskerOnline Headlines. Troy, we appreciate you taking some time here. I know it's been a very busy Friday with a lot going on, and let's get right to it. You guys released today that the series with Tennessee has been canceled. And this was a series that was set up in 2006 to be played in 2016, 2017. That got canceled, and here we are today. Kind of give us your thoughts on what went behind this decision on not playing the Tennessee series in 2026 and 2027.
Yeah, and it's really tied to the stadium renovation project. As months have gone on and we've really gotten our plans for what we want to do, it's become more and more obvious that we were going to be down capacity in 27. There's just no way around it. And so from a financial standpoint, the idea of playing 7 games at a 20% reduced capacity in 27 was going to be a real financial killer. And right now, as we try to implement the revenue share model and everything else, eyes and first and foremost are focused on, are we going to be able to continue to fund ourselves? And we looked and said, we need 8 games in that year with the stadium renovation. And we approached Tennessee and said, hey, are you willing to push this back again? I know we already did it, but we did it at your request last time so you could play that game at the racetrack. But could you push it back for us to accommodate this? And they couldn't, which I understand. And no harm there. This was our decision and our call. And so if they couldn't push it back and delay it, we just canceled the series. We've been working for the last couple of months on who could fit into those games. We had an FCS opening anyway, and that's where Northern Iowa came from. And that had to be filled. And then adding 2 MAC schools to replace games in those 2 years, which gives us 7 and 8 and 27, which essentially the math works out. It gives us 7 full home games or 8 maybe reduced capacity games. But it's really a long-term financial play based on the stadium being down, at least in part, in 27.
Is there a concern, Troy? I mean, do you expect to hear from the fan base to a certain extent about just the sort of non-marquee nature of these non-conference schedules in 2026 and 2027?
Oh, as a fan, I think most fans would rather us play, Notre Dame, Texas, and Tennessee, in the non-conference. And I get that. You want the games to be as good as they possibly can. Having 5 home games in one of those years in the Big Ten, those are 5 marquee games. When we're playing 9 conference games, we're going to get normally 5 instead of 5 in 26. Now we're going to have those 4 A4 games. But this is really, I would say, a short-term blip. The long-term of having Arizona and Oklahoma and I think Oklahoma State already on the books long-term. It really is not a change in scheduling philosophy. It's just we're going to have to accommodate. This is not the only bump we're going to have to accommodate to renovate a stadium to the magnitude our stadium needs to be renovated. And it's just maybe the first one that our fans have felt. Hopefully there's as few bumps as possible. It's during a construction project, logistically, people are going to have some workarounds and some go-arounds, and it's not going to be as comfortable. But when we come out the other side, there's going to be a lot in front of us, schedule and stadium to boot.
Troy, on the reduced capacity season in 2027, how much of a reduction are you talking right now when you look at what the numbers will be for that season?
Well, I'm going to say roughly 20%. Now, where that's really going to be is in the south end zone. And again, I don't have final plans, but to take the south end zone down and then rebuild it is not a 1-year project. It is a 2-year project. And so the idea, and we've tried to attack south from every which way to not go down in capacity, but in order that we have to bring it all down at once, we can build half of it back in a year and maybe put some temporary bleachers on top of a concourse and get as much as we can out of it. But I'm just roughly budgeting right now that we were down 20%, all of it in that south end zone in 27.
The Tennessee matter, we'll call it, occurs as we talk. It occurs in the backdrop of these talks between the Big Ten and the SEC of going to a scheduling arrangement where Big Ten teams would play SEC teams. So is this indicating that is down the road, that is something that's further down the road than maybe most people realize?
Well, I think this is completely separate. If not for the stadium project, there wouldn't be any change here. And I do think the I would say the public rumors, the media rumors that flew around about an SEC Big Ten scheduling alliance, if you will. We just came out of meetings in New Orleans this week with the SEC. That wasn't discussed. I would guess at some point it may come on the table, but it's really not as imminent as maybe some of the things I read about.
Yeah.
We play different numbers of league games. The structure of the playoff, is yet to unfold. So I think there's a lot of dominoes, maybe Steve, ahead of when that decision might happen. But I don't think there's anything that's ever been imminent with that particular concept.
Troy, when you look at playoff expansion, is there a big difference to you between 14 and 16? And what are the benefits in terms of being able to schedule more aggressively if you get the guaranteed spots for leagues like the SEC and Big Ten, knowing that you're not going to get dinged for playing good on good for several more games?
Well, and to your point, you look at what Michigan and Ohio State have done in their non-conference scheduling the last 2 years when they went on to win the national championship. Their schedules were there were no non-conference A4s on either of their schedules the year they won the national championship. Now, Indiana didn't this year. That doesn't necessarily give you direction, but I think we're all trying to figure out what the current playoff model, really how the schedule benefits you and how best to schedule to qualify for that playoff. If there's a different model, we'll have to reassess. Is it 14, 16? Line me up in the 16 column. But I also see where, there needs to be a reward for winning conference championships and the prospect of getting a couple of buys in there. I think there's so much more to it. Just when do we play? The teams that had the buys this year went 0-4, and is that a matter of who had the buys, or is that a matter of sitting out that week wasn't as advantageous as people might have thought it was? So I think there are so many unanswered questions.
Troy Dannen joins us. Troy is just back from New Orleans, where SEC, Big Ten athletic directors met. Others met. I think the two commissioners were there too. What was your two biggest takeaways from New Orleans? Was there something that resembled news out of there?
No, I would say what I don't think the public, we don't talk about as much in a public setting because it's not as glorious or sexy as just the operationalization of the House settlement should it settle.
Okay.
The devil has always been in the detail. It's one, the part of the detail of the settlement is the A4 is responsible for governance of it, enforcement in the regulatory side. It's not the NCAA moving forward from the settlement terms. And so, we don't have answers yet. We don't have answers from everything from, okay, it's 20.5. What happens if you go over?
Right.
What happens if you commit things that you shouldn't commit? What are the penalties? How are we going to enforce that? So I would say 80% of the meeting was really around House and not the sexy fun stuff that everybody wants to write a column about, but how are we actually going to operate the business next year in this new world?
Troy, I'm curious, in the rev share case, if it goes through, will the athletes, will the numbers have to be made public since you're paying the athletes? And then number two, are you going to have to pull like taxes and payroll and traditional things, or will they still be kind of 1099 contractors like they currently are with how their arrangements are with 1890?
Yeah, I think the answer to the last part of the question is I think it'll be much like NIL is today. They would be independent contractors. They'd receive money. There'd be a like a normal 1099, there'd be tax taken out, you know, if you're over $600 in total, and then they're on their own when they go to file their taxes. It's also my understanding that FERPA privacy rules will prevent the individual numbers for student athletes from being public, much like, you know, we don't know who's on a partial scholarship and who's on a full scholarship. There'll be numbers float around, rumor, but we will not be releasing them publicly.
Also, Troy, we're starting to see teams announcing they're going to have spring games, other teams not announcing they're going to, or announcing they're not going to have spring games, like Texas. Is there any news on that front? I guess what I was wondering the other day is how do you go about determining what the April 26th is going to look like? Is that you and Matt together? Do you have a marketing team? How's that all go?
Well, I think from a football standpoint, you know, it's, you know, Matt's going to decide what football looks like on that day, but there's going to be a lot more around it. And, you know, we have an internal group that involves basically every piece of the department trying to figure out what does that weekend look like. I would say at this point, there's going to be some flag football. There are going to be some alums back. There's going to be some media back playing flag. There may be a whole bunch of different teams, different segments against different groups. I would say Matt and I are both pushing hard for, you know, a women's flag game involving, you know, Nebraska's, whether it's our top intramural team, a club team, versus an outside team. You know, women's flag football is going to be a part of the Olympics in LA. The NFL is really pushing it. And so I would imagine that will be a part of the day. I think, and I won't steal an announcement from Danny, but I would guess we will have a volleyball, a spring volleyball game against another college team that weekend. Not in the stadium, but in Devaney.
Okay.
You know, there is a soccer game already scheduled that weekend. So I think it will be. We talked about it being a celebration. I think we'll see a little bit of everything. I think we'll see some skills competitions. I think a lot of what we saw in the Pro Bowl, the Pro Bowl's reinvented itself in some ways, and if you watched it this year, it was actually enjoyable to watch. See people without their helmet and see who they are as a person and have a little fun, and so I think that's the direction this will head.
Troy, you guys replaced the turf inside the Hawks, and we get asked this question all the time.
I know where you're going, Sean.
What is the Memorial Stadium turf going to look like? It's a new product, obviously, and is it going to look like what you kind of teased on?
It's going to look like Hawks. You know, I think the team boxes will be black. There'll be a little more flair, I guess, if you will, on the sides. But you know, the color scheme, the aesthetic of the turf, the fact that it's one solid color, not variances of green, that is what the turf will look like in the stadium this fall.
Red end zones?
Red end zones. Yep.
Yeah. Was that your idea?
I don't know if it's anybody's idea. I don't want to claim it in case people hate it, but you know, I will tell you that just my perception is we underutilize red a lot.
Really?
And I don't understand it. You know, we don't light the stadium at night from the outside. We should light it red every night. You know, red. It is an intimidating color, and we should use it a lot more than we use it. I'm not talking uniforms, but I'm just talking. I think I've told the governor. I think the road signs, the exits off of I-80 to the stadium should be in red, not in green, not in blue, but in red. So just things like that. It's just how we brand ourselves. So having those red end zones, I think it's a strong color. And when we put the black letters in the end zones, I think it's a strong look.
And Troy, you guys will add alcohol as well next year to the stadium. What is going on in that process right now? I mean, infrastructure. Are you looking at taps going in the stadium, or are you going to have to go with cans this first year? I mean, where are you at with this process?
Now that we have a concessionaire in Aramark, they were on campus this week, and we have a subgroup task force because we brought in outside security, Homeland Security, to come in and evaluate all of our security procedures and to help us prepare for alcohol, and then what is best practice with alcohol. Aramark has transitioned 3 schools from no alcohol to alcohol, including the University of Iowa a few years ago. So they've got experience in that. But they were first in this week, and figured out exactly how it sets up, where it sets up. Part of what we want to make sure of is that as we make investments in the infrastructure, those aren't investments we're going to have to tear out when the stadium project is done and just eat that money. So there are areas we will be able to invest in, significantly now. Areas may feel a little more portable now until the stadium's done, and those renovations get done with the stadium project.
Can we expect, though, a lot of new vendors and food options? I mean, with a new company coming in, I mean, how food's always a popular. Like, what can we expect?
Oh, I sure hope so. I sure expect a lot of different options. There'll be a lot of beer options. There will be other options that are in cans, I'm sure, wine and hard drinks and things like that. The one thing that the athletic department has the right to do is review the pricing, which is, I think, is an important thing, because the idea with all of this wasn't to get in and gouge everybody with, hey, now we're doing the concessions, let's charge twice what we used to charge before, but keep pricing as similar as it was before. I did tell the concessions providers I'm less concerned with the cost of alcohol. I'm more concerned with the cost of the products that, frankly, all 86,000 people are going to partake in, and not let's not go crazy. Let's try to keep things status quo wherever we can keep things status quo, and grow by growing with new products, the alcohol sales, and in areas that we haven't really contemplated before.
Final question here, Troy, as we wrap it up. The opener will be at Arrowhead Stadium in August. Do you have an update on sales and how strong sales have been for the game down there?
I don't have I knew the first week we'd sold 50,000 tickets.
Wow.
And which,
that's good.
It's really good. I don't expect there will be any tickets by the time that game kicks. I think that's a lot of the motivation for why Arrowhead wanted the game, for why Cincinnati was willing to move the game, and for why we wanted to be there. Our fans are going to take over, and it's going to feel like a home game in Kansas City. And the numbers were off the charts early on, and I just haven't followed up in the last few weeks to see what's happened since.
Well, Troy, we appreciate you taking time on a busy Friday, and looking forward to hearing more about the stadium and the future things coming.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks so much.